Alright, for 2.7 we have a couple of properties to look at. The first one, let's go ahead and read the definition first. If angles or segments are congruent to the same angle or segment, then they are congruent to each other. And that is called the transitive same property. So transitive same prop. So what that means is, let's say that you have angle A is congruent to angle B. Let's say that that's true, and it's true that angle B is congruent to angle C. Now, because both of these angles are congruent to angle B, then we can state that angle A is congruent to angle C. So we've seen a similar property to this with our complementary and supplementary angles, which is very specific. Now we're just talking more generalized. If angles or segments are congruent to the same angle, so transitive same property. Alright, next one. Let's read the definition first. If angles or segments are congruent to, we can get rid of this, are congruent to congruent angles or segments, then they are congruent to each other. So this is the transitive, here's how we'll write this, congruent property. So the explanation of this, let's say that angle A is congruent to angle B. We know that to be true. And angle C is congruent to angle D, and we also know that angle A is congruent to angle D. We can conclude that angle B is congruent to angle C. Alright, so that might look a little bit confusing, so let's break down what just happened. We have angle A is congruent to angle B, and angle C is congruent to angle D. Those are four different angles. We also know that angle A and angle D are congruent. So these are congruent to each other, which means that if angle A and angle D have the same measure, then B and C must have the same measure because they are congruent to A and D. So that's your transitive congruent property.